This plane flew with half its tail missing, one engine completely gone, and somehow, it still made it home. No modern jet could survive this. So how did a World War II bomber do it? Because this wasn't a one-time miracle. It happened over and over again. There are real photos of B-17 bombers returning to base with damage that looks impossible. Wings ripped open, metal torn apart, entire sections missing, and yet they kept flying. So what made this aircraft so hard to destroy? Because the B-17 Flying Fortress wasn't built to avoid damage. It was built to survive it. During World War II, bombing missions over Europe were some of the most dangerous flights ever attempted. Crews would fly deep into enemy territory, straight into heavily defended airspace. And once they reached the target, there was no turning back. They had to fly straight, level, and predictable, which made them perfect targets. And that's when the sky turned deadly. Flak would explode all around them, not near them, around them. Black bursts of anti-aircraft fire filling the sky, shrapnel ripping through metal, punching holes through wings, through the fuselage, sometimes even through the cockpit. You weren't dodging it, you were flying through it. And this is where most aircraft would fail, but not the B-17, because it was designed differently. It had a reinforced airframe, built to absorb damage instead of collapsing under it. And more importantly, it had 4 engines, which meant even if one failed, it could keep flying. If 2 failed, it could still stay in the air. And there are real cases where B-17S returned with only 2 engines working, barely holding altitude, struggling to stay level, but still making it home. And this is where it gets even crazier. Some bombers didn't just lose engines, they lost control surfaces, parts of the tail, sections of the wing, even chunks of the fuselage. Damage that should have made them uncontrollable. But somehow, they were still flyable, and that's because of how the aircraft was built. The B-17 had large wings, giving it incredible lift. Even when damaged, it could still generate enough lift to stay airborne, and its control systems had enough redundancy that even when partially destroyed, the pilots could still manage the aircraft. But surviving flak was only part of the problem, because they also had to deal with enemy fighters. And this is where the Flying Fortress name came from. The B-17 was covered in machine guns, turrets on the top, the bottom, the nose, the tail. Almost every angle was protected, which meant attacking one was dangerous, but attacking a formation of them, that was something else entirely. Because B-17S didn't fly alone. They flew in tight formations, each bomber covering the others with overlapping gunfire. From a distance, it looked like a wall of aircraft, a flying fortress. And flying into that was incredibly risky. Enemy fighters couldn't just fly straight in. They had to dodge defensive fire the entire time, and even then, they could still be hit. But here's the thing. Even with all that protection, B-17S still took damage, a lot of it. And this is the part most people don't realize. The goal wasn't to avoid damage, it was to survive it. Because once the bombing run started, they couldn't maneuver. They had to stay on course, which meant, for those moments, they were completely exposed. And that's when the worst hits usually came. But somehow, many of them still made it back. And this wasn't just luck, it was design. The B-17 could take punishment that would destroy other aircraft. It could keep flying when it shouldn't have been able to. And that's what made it legendary. But the aircraft wasn't the only reason missions succeeded. It was also the crew. Up to 10 people inside a single bomber, pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, gunners. Every one of them had a role, and every one of them knew how dangerous each mission was. They weren't just flying into combat. They were flying into something they couldn't escape once it started. Because once you're over the target, you're committed, and survival isn't guaranteed. And that's what makes the stories of these aircraft so incredible. Because the ones that came back shouldn't have. Planes barely holding together, crews injured, systems failing, and still, they made it home. And that's why the B-17 is remembered the way it is. Not because it was the fastest, not because it was the most advanced, but because it refused to go down, over and over again. It proved that survival in combat isn't just about avoiding damage. Sometimes, it's about enduring it, because this wasn't just a bomber. It was a machine built to refuse to die. If you enjoy content like this and want to see more deep dives into legendary aircraft, make sure to like the video and subscribe, because there's a lot more to uncover.